Syracuse moves on to the Sweet 16 after a 66-60 win over California in front of a partisan crowd at HP Pavilion. Dan Cohen with Andrew Kanell, who called the game for WAER Radio in Syracuse. And Andrew, this game was predicated on Syracuse's defense, forcing plenty of Golden Bears turnovers, and it threw Cal's game plan off, especially their two-guard attack.
Definitely Justin Cobbs, Alan Crabb. That was the storyline going into this game, Dan, and they really had not much success at all. Alan Crabb ended up with 9 points, but it was kind of a cheap 9 at the end. Really didn't accurately reflect the type of game he had, and they were just giving him fits the entire game. Clearly, they had signaled those two players out, Justin Cobbs, Alan Crabb, from the very get-go in the scouting reports, watching film beforehand. They made that translate out onto the floor. Just a great job defensively of getting out on the shooters, making sure just no open looks available the entire game for their star players.
Syracuse and Jim Boeheim this season has said this Syracuse team is focused on the defensive end. That's what they're built on, is that 2-3 zone, and it shined here in front of a crowd that really threw Syracuse off at times. It got loud when it became, a single-digit game, but Syracuse fought through it, and Jim Boeheim said after the game, he told his players that the fans in the stands, they don't score any points.
Yeah, that's exactly it. The fans in the stands, they were tough, as you said. I mean, there were times when it maybe came close to rattling the orange, but not quite. This Syracuse team, as Coach Boeheim, with his wonderful memory, referenced the Arkansas game all the way back in November. He said that was the toughest road environment that Syracuse has ever been in. They played in places like Arkansas. They've obviously played at Pittsburgh, at Georgetown, and all those places numerous times, at UConn, in Hartford, Connecticut as well. Syracuse is used to this. Obviously, it feels a little bit different that you're in the NCAA tournament. You have to deal with a hostile crowd, so it's just a little bit of a surreal thing in that way. But as far as just considering what it is like to go against a hostile crowd in a hostile environment, certainly something that Syracuse is used to dealing with it. Ideal against a 12 seed when you're a 4? No, but this Syracuse team faced it well and ended up getting through it because at the end of the day, as you said, the crowd doesn't score any points, and Syracuse proved it was a better team than Cal, the team on the floor.
Syracuse winning by 6 against Cal, getting plenty of its offense from the free throw line. Cal in foul trouble for most of this game, so Syracuse now has 2 wins under its belt in the NCAA tournament. They leave San Jose, go back to the East Coast, and now they go to Washington, D.C. for the Sweet 16. Certainly a favorable geographic location. And looking ahead to that Sweet 16 matchup, we'll know the opponent on Sunday, whether it's going to be Indiana or Temple. The Hoosiers have spent most of the season at the top of the polls, and Temple beat the Syracuse team earlier at Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, it's funny. People were joking after the game, what's the sexier matchup, Syracuse against Temple for the second time or Syracuse against Indiana? I think the answer to that question is clearly Indiana, but as you said, either way, it actually becomes pretty interesting because the matchup everybody is waiting for is the Hoosiers. However, if Temple somehow upsets Indiana, then Syracuse gets to face a team that gave it a ton of trouble in Madison Square Garden, an environment that Syracuse is very familiar with and has much of his home crowd there. And speaking of that hometown favor for Syracuse, Georgetown, Washington, D.C. isn't home, but it's pretty close to it. That huge Syracuse alumni base there. It'll be really the exact opposite of what Syracuse had to deal with here with all those Cal fans that were in support of the Golden Bears. In Washington, D.C., in the huge alumni area for Syracuse grads, I mean, Syracuse will have the crowd on their side in the Sweet 16, whether it be against Indiana, whether it be against Temple.
2 weeks ago, Syracuse was court-stormed at the Verizon Center against Georgetown, and now Syracuse has booked its ticket to the Sweet 16 in Washington, D.C., beating Cal here in San Jose, 66-60. He's Andrew Kanell of WAER Radio. I'm Dan Cohen. Be sure to keep it on social media and to our sports blog. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and at our sports blog at sportsblog.citrustv.net for more coverage from the 2013 NCAA Tournament.